Hello, I'm Robin Cole, and welcome to the Satellite Image Deep Learning Podcast. In this episode, I caught up with Kai Jeggle to discuss his experience pursuing a PhD at the intersection of machine learning and remote sensing. We discussed his work on IceCloudNet, a deep learning model that reconstructs 3D cloud structures from 2D imagery with sparse depth measurements. Data fusion and sparse machine learning are fascinating topics. I learned a lot from this conversation, and I hope you do too. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, as this really helps to reach a wider audience. Thank you. Hi, Kai. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me today.
Looking forward to this conversation. So today, two-parter. So we're going to begin by talking about your career history and then move on to your research. Over to you for the history.
Thanks. So I give a bit of intro about my background. So I've been in the kind of ML space for some years. I worked, after my studies, I worked in an ML ops startup as a software engineer, but then was interested or motivated to apply the machine learning skills and techniques to more pressing questions, let's say, of our time. So I was looking specifically to work on climate issues, to tackle climate change with machine learning. Mm-hmm. And then by a few coincidences, I ended up in the atmospheric physics lab at ETH in Zurich, a group that works on, tries to understand cloud processes and climate modeling, etc. And clouds in general are one of the big uncertainties that are remaining in climate modeling and also future climate projections. So it's a topic not everyone is aware of, but in the community, it's quite a vibrant area of research and quite important as well.
So was that direction, was it based on your previous studies or just something totally new you wanted to go into?
It's really completely new. Like I before starting the PhD, I didn't even know that this kind of cloud topic was something that was actually important, or I didn't know anything about microphysics and so on. Mm-hmm. And I was mainly looking for PhD positions in kind of this intersection of machine learning and climate research. And then I saw this this call for applications, and then I applied to it. And it was also a pretty steep learning curve, I have to admit. Like teaching atmospheric physics classes and so on as a TA without any prior knowledge was quite intense.
Okay, so teaching was a significant part of the PhD program.
Yeah. I mean, the first years for sure. It took up quite some time. Significant, I would say, like 20 to maybe 30% of the time in the beginning, and then in the later years it was a bit less intense.
Yeah. And did you find your experience having worked in industry for some time as a software engineer, was that applicable? Was it something that assisted you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's a lot of coding involved and a lot of Python, of course, in data science, machine learning. So definitely these skills helped me and were transferable. Mm-hmm. And being in a group of physicists, I think I could also help my colleagues sometimes with kind of my more technical skills. So I think it was always a good symbiosis. And I think it's just nice also to change a bit environments and surround yourself with people with different backgrounds.
Yeah. And obviously when you do a PhD, there's a lot of responsibility on you to set the direction, set the objectives. Yeah. How did you find that, having, worked in industry?
Yeah, I mean, since I was a bit out, like let's say like a new joiner to the field of atmospheric physics, it took me some time to also understand like what is kind of the current state of the research, what are actually interesting problems to work on, because I think I always came with the glasses, okay, where can we use machine learning and kind of data science to improve the kind of status quo, and just come a bit with a different angle than maybe other people in the group. I think that helped a lot, just looking for like inefficiencies and where can we automate things and so on.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a great place to start talking about what you did then.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would like to talk about one project that I did towards the end of my PhD. It's called IceCloudNet, and as the name suggests, it focuses on clouds that consist of only ice. So these are cirrus clouds, we call them in the jargon, and they exist very high up in the atmosphere. You all have seen them probably once. These are these feathery, thin clouds up high up in the sky, and those are, yeah, I would say specifically not so well understood yet. So there's many microphysical processes and so on that are acting there. And also one reason why it's hard to study them is that there's not a good observational basis. So it's on the one hand, it's difficult to get actual samples from there. So there are some campaigns that fly with airplanes into these clouds and measure kind of the properties there. But it's quite expensive and quite difficult, and also it's much more demanding than for lower clouds, let's say. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, there exist satellite data sets, which I guess here the audience is more interested in. And there also we have the issue that on the one hand side we have passive satellites, for example, like SEVIRI, which is a geostationary satellite, or MODIS, that just take like 2D images, let's say in different wavelengths, like infrared, but also visual, and you get nice overview of like the cloud dynamics, because you get for SEVIRI, for example, every 15 minutes you have an observation. But the big problem is that you only have this like top-down view, so you don't really get in, or not much information about the structure of the cloud top height, etc. But yeah, if you also just look up in the sky, the clouds are like a 3D dynamical system that's always evolving. So it's quite important to also understand kind of the vertical structure.
Right. So not well understood, hard to get data on.
Exactly.
Real data sources from above, 2D, but we really care about the 3D structure.
Exactly. And this actually, they exist. Luckily, there exists also 3D data from polar orbiting satellites. So, for example, MODIS is also polar orbiting, but there, and I think with this satellite, many people are familiar with, or Sentinel. But there's also satellites that carry active instruments, so that really send down a laser, like a lidar or radar, and based on the kind of the backscatter, we can make assumption about the cloud properties. And with these data products, we get really nice vertical information. The big problem, however, is that it's very sparse. So as you can imagine, it's polar orbiting, so you get very thin kind of curtains of data. So the spatial coverage is super low, and also the temporal coverage is super low. So to get data from the same kind of point, or the same like latitude, longitude, it takes 14 days. And so, not really any, so you can only do like stationary studies, but not really any temporal evolution, which is, clouds are always evolving. So it's important to study the temporal evolution.
Right. So your objective is to use this limited 3D data to augment the available 2D data and get a much more holistic view of the system. Okay.
Exactly. So the goal is, and this is actually the data set that I was looking for throughout my PhD, because I did a lot of studies on kind of with these active instruments, but always the main limitation was that you can only kind of study the cloud at one point in time, but you miss kind of the temporal history, which is so important. And then in other studies, I augmented it, for example, with RFI reanalysis data, and calculate trajectories with the RFI reanalysis data. But then you always have the problem that the RFI resolution is super high. In the model itself, you have like different parameterizations that have a lot of uncertainties. So there's always this problem that we didn't have this kind of temporarily resolved data cube. And with IceCloudNet, we are trying to close this observational gap and really create like a 3D cloud structure data set with the time dimension. So basically a 4D data set. Maybe I can show quickly how the data looks like. So I'll explain it a bit because I understand some people are listening to this only and not seeing the video. So here on the left side, you see one sample image from SEVIRI, so a geostationary satellite that just gathers data in different infrared wavelengths. Here we see the 10.8 micron wavelength, but we also have some visible channels. And you get this kind of image every 15 minutes. And just to visualize how kind of the polar orbiting satellite is covering this, is that for one full day, so we get actually 96 images from the geostationary satellite. We only have one single overpass over a tiny kind of area in the geostationary satellite from the polar orbiting satellite. So really only cover a tiny bit. However, we get these really nice vertical profiles, which you can see on the right side. So here we can see that we really have this vertical resolution. We see a kind of here an anvil cloud. We have a convective core. So you see this in summer storms. So you have this convective high towering core, also a lot in the tropics, but we can observe it sometimes in Europe too. And then this anvil that's kind of gets pressed when the cloud hits the top of the troposphere. And this is a very typical kind of cloud structure that is also changing now due to climate change because the temperatures in the troposphere are changing. So this is like it's, let's say, a hot research topic. And but by only having these snapshots, it's hard to understand actually how these anvil clouds evolve. And now I'm just quickly showing, and maybe afterwards you can talk a bit about the technical details of IceCloudNet if that's interesting. What kind of the outcome is. Now on the left side, you see kind of the input to our IceCloudNet model, which is the 2D SEVIRI satellite images. I mean, in the model we patch it up and so on, but now it's just like a full 10 by 10 degree snapshot. And on the right side, you can see the vertical structure that we create with IceCloudNet. So you really have the 3D structures. You can see anvils, and you can see the development of the clouds in 3D and through time. And with this, we increase the availability of the vertical cloud information by a factor of 1 million. And we open source this data set. And so now researchers can use it to do studies on mesosteric convective system evolution, aerosol cloud interactions, and a lot more. And so this is kind of the project in a nutshell.
Fantastic. So the 10 by 6 is because you've gone from a 2D to a 3D volume, right?
Not only because the spatial, also the horizontal cover of the active satellites is very sparse. So you don't. So maybe I go back. So you basically have like one overpass every 14 days, let's say, or they're then getting in parallel, but let's say per day in this kind of 10 by 10 degree patch, you only have one overpass per day. So kind of you have also kind of horizontally the coverage is very sparse.
So the 10 by 6 is from that slice on the right to the volumetric over the full area. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I'm immediately wondering if a similar technique can be used for like lidar and tree height, other places where you have these kind of point measurements almost, but another view that you could combine with it.
I mean, this one was like one big challenge also in the project, that you have only these sparse data for supervision. So you only have the vertical profiles are very sparsely available, and in the end you want to create this whole 3D structure. So it took quite a lot of experimenting with the model, with how we choose the patches, and kind of a lot of data engineering until we got to the current.
Good. And this was just one project you did within your PhD, or was this kind of the cumulative output?
Yeah, no, this was like the final project that I did in my PhD, and kind of the one that I'm most proud of, because because I always had this problem in my PhD that I was because kind of the overarching topic was using machine learning for cirrus clouds, and kind of working on improving our understanding of that. And I always had the issue that I only had these active satellite instrument retrievals, but then no kind of temporal resolution. And yeah, as I said before, then I was using a lot of ERA 5 data or model output. So we did one study, for example, also on explainable machine learning, where we tried to predict kind of the cirrus cloud properties based on ERA 5 data, and then try to understand like which meteorological and aerosol variables have the most impact on the cirrus cloud property observations in different conditions. So that was another project. But I think for this kind of like merging different satellite views and so on, this was this last project. And
right. Fantastic. Let's hear about the solution then. How does this work?
Yeah, so basically it's a deep learning model that takes as an input the SEVIRI images and a bit of static metadata like the location, the season, and so on. And then we predict kind of we predict the full cube that you saw before. But then we can only supervise the model on kind of where we have the data actually. So we predict the full cube, but then we mask it, and we only have one kind of curtain, one profile that we calculate then the loss on. I can briefly show the kind of the model architecture that makes sense. So on the left side, you can see kind of the infrared, the visible channels as an input, the static metadata. We have like a sinusoidal embedding, I guess.
Quick point, there's a little bar across the top there. You might want to click the OK just to clear that so we can see what's going on. Okay, so metadata, images.
Exactly. And in the at the beginning, we experimented just with a simple UNet. I guess always a good starting point. And then in the output, we actually used because it's kind of like a 2D to 3D translation. So in the output, we used the channel dimension as the vertical dimension, because then we only predict like one channel, or like we have like the two different variables, ice water content and ice crystal number concentration that we predict. But then we use the channel dimension as the vertical dimension. And then we create like these cubes. Then we use this the masking, and this was kind of and calculate the loss on the masked variables. And this is like the first try. Then I guess this is always the problem when working with convolutions, both in like computer vision, but especially also with satellite data, that you always get this blurring effect if you use ConvNets. And then we just were inspired by some other work in different discipline, like physics discipline, where they had like sparse meteor showers or something, and then introduced this discriminator model. So it's basically similar to the VAE GAN, so that you have like a generator here, which is our UNet. Then we have a PatchGAN that then just learns to tell real from fake images apart, and acts like as a structural loss to produce more realistic structures of clouds. For example, you have always this fading both in the horizontal but also towards the edges, of the cloud, which is not what we see actually in the physical world, or which is not physically consistent. And using this discriminator helped a lot to produce better results. And then it's kind of this like VAE-GAN-like architecture that we used.
And this architecture presumably evolved to this point. This wasn't V1.
So sorry, say again.
As in, you tried a few other like intermediate steps towards this final architecture.
Exactly. I mean, we tried a lot of different things. I mean, in the beginning, we only predicted not because now we do like many vertical levels. So like I think like 60 or so. In the beginning, we only did like 2 levels, like 2 type of different cirrus clouds, and then we did like the full vertical. We first did the UNet, also even just using like pixel-based approaches. But then we saw, okay, using the spatial structure of the cloud informs, for example, what I earlier showed was this like convective cores. So if you see like the model, and I guess that's my interpretation of it, what the model learns is it sees like a convective core, then it knows like, or it learns that there's usually like a anvil attached to it, and then it kind of learns these spatial interactions. That's kind of the interpretation, I guess, why the spatial model works better than just using a pixel-based approach, which other people have done like some years ago already.
Right. Yeah. And what was the loss function?
Yeah, so the loss function was we had the kind of composition of loss functions. So we just used like an L1 loss for the kind of loss for the masked input versus the kind of the actual observations. Again, here, like the L1 works a bit better than the root mean squared error in the sense that it produces less blurring. And then in the discriminator loss, we have like a Wasserstein loss. And then we combine this and have like an adaptive loss rate, which because kind of like a similar setup was used in kind of some seminal diffusion model papers. And I think it's always good to go on Hugging Face and check like what are kind of like state-of-the-art models in computer vision doing, which is, I guess, like the discipline in machine learning that's closest to what we're doing in satellite data, and see how we can do a transfer from these like cutting-edge AI research to our application research. And
can you give us an insight to the engineering approach, considering you have like quite a strong engineering background, of course?
I have to say that this project, I'm really fortunate that I could carry it out in the ESA Phi Lab. So my PhD was based at ETH in Zurich, but this project itself was started at the European Space Agency, where I had great collaborators. And I mean, the engineering process was quite incremental. So there was a lot of like whiteboard session from like data engineering, like how do we co-locate the different data sets together, and then building up the models incrementally and improving the outcome. So I think I guess this maybe what also other people can resonate with. It's about taking existing approaches, and then you have to refine it to your kind of specific problem set, because usually it never works by just taking something. And I think, I think it's advisable to also use like battle tested components, like not writing too many things from scratch. So we, for example, also use these conf-next blocks, which made quite a buzz, I think, in the computer vision community some years ago. And just using kind of these components, I think is really helpful than trying to invent everything from scratch, even if that's a lot of fun. But I think it just avoids too many headaches on like the small nitty-gritty machine learning that you still have anyway. Right?
Yeah, of course. There's always some challenges. So this is really nice results. You got a paper out on this work?
Yes. So currently the paper is on archive, and it's hopefully accepted soon at AI for the Earth systems. That's an AMS journal. And also the data set is out currently 1 year, but we are now extending it to 10 years. So maybe we can link it in the show notes. So people who are interested, feel free to play around with the data or contact me if you're interested to use the data or to learn more about it.
Great. And what's next for you then?
Yeah, so I finished the PhD and now I'm transferring to industry again. I will start in a Amsterdam-based startup. They're called Dexter Energy, and they're doing kind of renewable energy yield prediction and also kind of price forecasts for renewable energy prices based on weather and satellite data. So I'm going a bit away from like the climate science, the physics, and more to like energy applied machine learning, still sticking to the AI for climate change. So I guess the renewable energies is a big part of solving the demand for more energy. And exciting times ahead for sure.
Well, congratulations. Very productive PhD. Great work. Fully open sourced as well. Paper to look forward to. Where's the best space for people to follow your updates?
So I would say semi-active on LinkedIn. I guess that would be the place to follow me. I guess you can put it also in the show notes.
Will do. Okay, brilliant. Thanks for joining me, and all the best for your new role.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. It was great talking to you, and have a good day.
See ya.